This is Matthew Walker.
Matthew Walker,
neuroscientist and best-selling author,
and one of the world's leading researchers in sleep science.
In March of 2023, he revealed secret hacks on how to get better sleep on the Diary of a CEO podcast. As a person who only gets 5 to 6 hours of sleep at night, I was absolutely shocked to learn about the impact sleep has in relation to caffeine, naps, genes, and even weight loss. And I'm now currently regretting staying up until 5 a.m. last night. However, this podcast is also very long, so let me save you over 2 hours and explain everything he says in only 22 minutes. Without further ado, let's stash these secrets into the vault. According to Matthew Walker, sleep is the single most effective thing to reset brain and body health. In fact, sleep is even more important than exercise, diet, and drinking water.
The only thing I lose out against is oxygen. If I deprive you of oxygen, you're going to pop out of existence a little bit quicker.
Therefore, he considers sleep to be the elixir of life, and
it's Mother Nature's best effort yet at immortality.
Walker's weekend routine was absolutely jam-packed with riveting social activities, like
go to my doctor's residence and have this sort of igloo of journals around me that I would sit and read at the weekend, which probably tells you everything about my social life.
However, when Matthew Walker was reading through the medical journals, he started noticing an intriguing relationship between sleep problems and dementia.
I wonder if the sleep problems are not simply a symptom of the dementia. I wonder if it's a potential cause.
Shockingly, he discovered that some dementias were actually eating away at the sleep centers in the brain. Luckily, he talks about ways to prevent this later in the podcast, so stick around. But how come different people sleep at different times, like people that are night owls versus people that are early birds?
Something else that we call your chronotype. Are you a morning type, evening type, or somewhere in between? And by the way, you don't get to decide.
Across the entire human population, there's about a 1/3 split of these different sleep chronotypes. But why exactly is it a split?
Because when we're in a tribe, if we all sleep at the same time, we're all vulnerable for 8 hours.
But if there's genetic variety, everyone gets their 8 hours of sleep, but it's spread out across the night so that the tribe as a collective is only vulnerable for around 2 to 3 hours. Mother Nature is kinda genius. If you're single, no worries, you'll find the right one for you soon enough. But this next section is kinda not applicable for you yet, so feel free to skip to this timestamp. Now that all the married couples are listening, how do these different sleep chronotypes impact our relationships? Well, unfortunately,
usually about a third of them will cite sleep difficulties or sleep issues as a cause of their breakup.
Luckily, Walker has a solution for couples with mismatching chronotypes.
I often speak about the notion of what's called a sleep divorce.
A sleep divorce is when partners sleep in different locations, like in different rooms or in the same room but with different beds. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds just like a normal divorce and just an overall terrible idea in general for the relationship.
Because people think, well, if we're not sleeping together, then we're not sleeping together. The exact opposite is true.
When couples are sleeping well, the testosterone and estrogen hormones rise. And for women especially, every extra hour of sleep she gets increases her libido by 14%. However, according to surveys, Walker does admit that people do feel more satisfied when sleeping with their partner.
When you survey people and say, how satisfied are you with your sleep? Which is a subjective measure. People will say, I'm actually more satisfied with my sleep when I'm with my partner.
So sleeping alone may result in better objective sleep quality, but you may still prefer sleeping with a partner for subjective satisfaction. So it's really up to you and your partner at the end of the day, married couples. Alright, welcome back, single individuals. Unfortunately, although sleep is getting greater awareness, rates of insomnia and anxiety disorders continue to increase. And one of the reasons for this is because
modernity is making it so much more difficult for us to sleep.
You see, sleep is biological, but also environmental, meaning there are so many external factors in the modern world that are affecting our sleep. From stress from work, noise pollution, light pollution, social media, the list just goes on. What's even worse is that society, from a capitalistic point of view, does not prioritize sleep. Therefore, the modern world is basically designed to decrease and diminish sleep. In fact, the CEO of Netflix literally says, we actually compete with sleep and we're winning.
And it just stunned me that, that we're going to go to war with sleep.
The war on our sleep is actually going so badly that
here in the United States, the average amount of sleep that people are getting is 6 hours and 29 minutes.
Thankfully, some countries do have better sleep averages, but there is still an overall lack of focus on sleep, even though it has such a great impact on our health and body. So how would Matthew Walker redesign society to get better sleep? He divides this question into 6 levels. Firstly, government should create public health campaigns to promote better sleep.
I don't remember, and maybe you can, but any major first world nation government that has had a public health campaign regarding sleep, those same governments have had public health campaigns regarding, eating, regarding smoking, regarding drunk driving, regarding risky behaviors, safe, loneliness, mental health. Where is sleep?
Sleep has an extremely close relationship with all of these health issues, so there needs to be more awareness being created by the government on this global deprivation of sleep. Next, many businesses promote the sleep is for the soft attitude, but companies should actually be prioritizing sleep, not just for employee well-being, but also for capitalistic purposes.
At a national level, insufficient sleep costs most nations about 2% of their GDP.
Insufficient sleep costs lost profits.
NASA, they were looking at using naps in their astronaut program. If you make an error at work and you're here terrestrially on the ground, it's probably non-trivial. You make an error when you're up in space, it can be a big deal.
NASA and other big companies invest heavily in nap culture for productivity purposes. NASA naps have increased productivity by 34% and increased alertness by over 50%.
And in fact, the data was so powerful that it ended up being transmitted to all of the terrestrial workers on the ground. It was a NASA nap culture.
For the same reason, Google has nap pods called shh rooms. These big companies understand the value of investing in nap culture for increased productivity and performance. On the flip side, lack of sleep leads to employees choosing less challenging problems and producing fewer creative solutions. Underslept employees also tend to slack off and let others do their work, creating a really terrible work culture. They're also more likely to engage in devious behavior, such as falsifying data or inappropriate reimbursement claims. Walker puts this perfectly.
If you don't snooze, you lose.
Did you know that doctors only receive about an hour of sleep education, even though sleep is basically 1/3 of their patients' lives? That's why Walker's next level is medicine.
Wonder your doctors aren't treating your sleep problems, thinking about your sleep problems, understanding your sleep. It's not their fault. And plus, they're sleep deprived anyway when they're being trained.
What's scarier is that junior doctors are 168% more likely to get into a car accident after their 30-hour shift due to a lack of sleep. In a similar category, the education level needs to be revamped. There are classes on sex education, anti-bullying, drugs, and more, but surprisingly, there are no sleep classes. Then we make it to the family level. It's no surprise that teenagers need more sleep than they are getting. In fact, if you're a parent, you might notice that your teen stubbornly won't go to bed until way past midnight.
It is not their fault because they have a biologically wired shift in their tendency of when they want to wake up and when they want to sleep.
Because of the combination of late sleep and early school times, teens tend to sleep in on the weekends to try to recover from the sleep debt, resulting in parents barging into the rooms and trying to wake them up.
They'll pull open the curtains, they will pull the covers off and they say, you're wasting the day.
In reality, only 15% of teens are actually getting sufficient sleep.
What happens is a parent-to-child transmission of sleep neglect. They're saying you're lazy, you're slothful. So then what happens? Well, in 15, 20 years time, now that teenager has got a teenage child. What do? They go back in the room, they rip the curtains open, they say you're wasting the day because that's what they were told.
And finally, the last level comes down to the individual and varies from person to person. Alright, so the average sleep cycle lasts for about 90 minutes. So does something like a 20-minute nap even do anything since it's so short?
Naps certainly are a good thing, but with a big caveat.
Napping can offer benefits such as improved cardiovascular health, learning and memory abilities, and emotional regulation. But how can I get more REM or deep sleep in my naps?
Why do you want to get more REM sleep? And their answer is, well, isn't that the good stuff? It turns out that there is no good stuff. It's all good stuff. Maybe with the exception of that light stage 1 non-REM sleep. You need all of them. You can't shortchange any of them.
Short naps up to about 20 minutes can provide benefits for learning, lower blood pressure, and reduced anxiety, which is insanely overpowered.
The reason I would say be careful with naps is for 2 main sort of suggestions.
The first suggestion is don't nap for longer than 20 minutes. Once you go past 30 to 45 minutes, you're coming out of deep sleep, which will cause you to wake up with a sleep hangover, also known as sleep inertia. Secondly, don't nap after 3 p.m., especially if you have insomnia or sleep difficulties, because
when you take a nap, it's like a pressure valve on a cooker. You're just releasing some of that healthy sleepiness that you've been building up. And therefore, if you are struggling with sleep at night and then you nap during the day, it's terrible because you're taking away all of that healthy, good weight of sleepiness that we've been trying to build up on your shoulders to give you the best chance of a good night of sleep.
Every single person in my family is an avid caffeine enthusiast, which is why the kitchen always smells good in the morning. However, it also turns out that caffeine will have an impact on your sleep and my family's sleep in 4 detrimental ways. Firstly, caffeine can disturb your sleep if you get the timing wrong. This is because caffeine's quarter life can last 10 to 12 hours.
So if you have a cup of coffee at noon, at midday, a quarter of that caffeine is still in your brain at midnight.
Everyone knows that caffeine makes you more awake, but what most people might not know is how. Adenosine is the chemical in your brain that makes you sleepy. So caffeine floods into your brain and blocks your adenosine signals.
Your brain was thinking, I'm starting to get tired, it's 10 p.m., but now all of a sudden that signal is blocked.
In simple terms, caffeine is basically blocking the sleepiness signal in your brain. Although the adenosine gets blocked by the caffeine, it continues to keep building up as time passes, eventually causing a huge wave of sleepiness called the caffeine crash.
And now when the caffeine finally gets metabolized and excreted out of your system, not only do you go back to the sleepiness that you had many hours before, it's that plus all of the adenosine sleepiness that's been building up during that time in between. So you get hit with this huge tsunami wave of sleepiness.
And if you thought that was bad, caffeine also makes you more anxious and worried. And these emotions are extremely amplified, specifically at nighttime.
Things at night, in the darkness of night, are so much bigger than they are in the brightness of day.
These stressful emotions cause you not to fall asleep, which makes you more anxious, which causes you not to fall asleep, which makes you even more worried. The next thing you know, it's 6 a.m. in the morning. Finally, excessive caffeine can significantly reduce deep sleep.
It will strip away your deep sleep by about somewhere between 15 to 30%.
Deep sleep is crucial for the cardiovascular system, immune system replenishment, metabolic regulation, remembering memories, and brain toxin clearance. By reducing your deep sleep, you significantly damage your memory, health, and basically everything else that's important to function as a human. So this may sound paradoxical at first, but Walker also says that drinking coffee is good for your health. Now, how on earth does that make sense?
It's got nothing to do with the caffeine.
Coffee, it turns out, contains an extremely high dose of antioxidants, such as chlorogenic acid, which is extremely beneficial for your health. That's why decaffeinated caffeine gives you very similar health benefits without the negative impact of caffeine on your sleep. However, before you start gargling 100 cups of decaf a day, it's not really a linear progression.
It peaks at about 2 to 3 and then actually starts to go down in the opposite direction.
Apparently, there have been some health coaches that say that caffeine will boost your workout, but if you're an athlete or just working out in general, it's also important to factor the impact caffeine has on your sleep.
I mean, sleep is probably the very best legal performance-enhancing drug that we know of, that not enough athletes are abusing.
Some of my friends have tried sleep medications like melatonin to sleep better, but do they actually have a positive benefit on your sleep health?
Right now, we don't typically advocate sleeping pills as the first-line defense agent against or for insomnia as a treatment.
In 2016, the American College of Physicians suggested that sleeping pills should no longer be the go-to treatment for insomnia, and instead should be replaced by cognitive behavioral therapy. This is because sleep supplements and natural remedies for sleep are not recommended for long-term use and are really only useful for putting you into sedation, which is not true sleep. But what is this replacement therapy?
It focuses on cognitive aspects and it focuses on behavioral aspects.
Cognitive behavioral therapy addresses the anxiety around sleep. Many people with sleep issues have anxiety around the bedroom.
I can't sleep, so every time I walk into the bedroom, my bed is the enemy. And I look at the bedroom and I look at the bed, and I just know that that means I'm going to have a bad night of sleep.
At that point, a patient is not confident in their ability to sleep and actually is controlled by sleep when it should be the other way around.
So one of the things we do in cognitive behavioral therapy is that we lower that anxiety and we say, look, we all have a bad night of sleep. It doesn't mean that tomorrow you're going to wake up with depression or Alzheimer's disease. Don't worry, you're not going to get cancer, just because you've had a bad night of sleep.
Therapy focuses on changing thoughts and beliefs around sleep, while also building confidence and managing sleep expectations. So hypothetically, if it's 2 a.m. in the morning and you have work at 7, what should you do? After 30 minutes of time awake, the recommendation is to get out of bed and go into a different room to do relaxing things like reading a book, listening to a podcast, stretching, etc. But avoid eating, working, or using digital devices. Your brain is an associative device, so if it becomes used to you being awake in your bed, it will learn to always be wide awake in bed.
Only return to bed when you're sleepy, and there's no time limit for that.
Eventually, you'll relearn the association of bed with sleepiness and be able to fall asleep as soon as you touch the comfy, relaxed, voluptuous mattress. However, there's an issue. Not a lot of people, including me, want to get out of bed in the middle of the night.
At that point, I would say, okay, that's reasonable. The first thing I would suggest is meditation. And when I was researching that for the book, I just thought this is all a bit, holding hands and singing Kumbaya. This is not for me, this meditation stuff. I couldn't get away from the strength of the data.
Meditation has impressive benefits on insomnia and sleep, so even 10 minutes before bed can be helpful to getting a good night's rest. However, it doesn't stop at meditation. Different people have different preferences for background noise when sleeping. That's why meditation apps have introduced sleep stories, which is like an adult's version of being read a bedtime story.
Meditation company Calm, was saved by the introduction of sleep stories, and it became a unicorn company. In terms of its valuation, it broke $1 billion.
In the grand scheme of things, podcasts, sleep stories, and meditation are all basically doing the exact same thing, reducing your stress and taking your mind off itself. Well, what if you don't have access to a phone at night? Here's another sleep hack for you. Instead of counting sheep, try this instead.
If you just close your eyes and you think about a walk that you take frequently, let's say it's a walk with the dog, and you think about it in high fidelity detail. So I close my eyes, I go out the door, I take a left down the steps, then I'm going to go up the street, I take the first left, past that pine tree. That's the level of detail. If you just walk yourself on that mental walk, sure enough, people fall asleep in about 50% less time.
This is because the descriptive nature saturates our limited bandwidth for detail, making it extremely hard for worries and anxieties to enter our mind. Also, knowing what time it is has absolutely no positive benefit for your mind. So removing all the clocks from your bedroom can also help in getting better sleep. Finally, if none of these recommendations are working for you, just simply resting in bed can be an alternative when you're struggling to sleep. A common question is, can you make up for lost sleep? And the answer is no.
Sleep is not like the bank. In other words, you can't accumulate a debt as you were doing during the week and then hope to try and pay it off at the weekend.
Here's what's scary. There are several terrifying consequences for lost sleep. In the short term, sleep-deprived drivers will have 1 to 2 seconds of microsleep at the wheel, which can cause drifts into different lanes or oncoming traffic. Next, your memory, performance, and libido all drop off, while your blood pressure and heart rate creeps up. That's not all. Your blood sugar levels will become so disrupted that they lead to a pre-diabetic classification. If you're a healthy young male, all levels of testosterone will drop to someone who is 10 years older, basically aging you an entire decade. And if you're female, your reproductive health, including estrogen, luteinizing hormone, and follicle-stimulating hormones, will all be impaired. Unfortunately, it doesn't even end there. In the midterm, you will progress towards obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, mental health issues, immune compromise, and higher infection risk. And finally, in the long term, you'll experience premature mortality, also known as death.
The shorter your sleep, the shorter your life.
However, there's a surprising change. Once you go above 9 to 10 hours of sleep, your mortality risk goes up as well. So the 7 to 9 hour range is usually optimal.
But the final long-term consequence that I would say is Alzheimer's disease.
What Walker discovered was that Alzheimer's disease-related proteins like beta amyloid and tau protein build up in the brain during the day.
If I deprive a human being of sleep for a single night, the next day we can see an immediate increase in these Alzheimer's disease-related proteins.
This is because the brain's cleansing system, which is now known as the glymphatic system, is activated during deep non-REM sleep, which de-escalates your risk for Alzheimer's disease. Sleep, in other words, is like a power cleanse for your brain. If you're trying to lose fat, build muscle, or both like me, there are 3 major connections between sleep and weight loss. First up, hormones. Sleep deprivation reduces leptin, the fullness hormone, by 18%, while also increasing ghrelin, the hunger hormone, by 28%. Overall, hunger levels rise about 26% due to sleep deprivation. You lose twice in this situation. You feel less full while also wanting to eat more because of the hunger.
Underslept individuals started to eat in those studies 300 to 400 extra calories at each sitting.
But what happens next is even worse. Sleep deprivation also increases desire for unhealthy foods. This is is because the reward centers of the brain are more responsive to highly desirable, unhealthy foods when you're sleep deprived.
When sleep gets short, your waistline typically starts to expand.
And if you thought that was all, there's one final nail in the coffin.
If you're not getting sufficient sleep, then 60% of all of the weight that you lose will come from lean muscle mass and not fat.
This means that when you're on a diet, getting sufficient sleep is essential, because otherwise you'll still be gaining fat, but also losing all of your muscle. Now that we know the dangers of lost sleep, what are some actionable things that we can do right now to improve our sleep? Firstly, regularity. No matter if it's the weekday or weekend, go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. Secondly, darkness. In the last hour before bed, try dimming half of the lights in every room.
You will be surprised at how sleepy that darkness will make you feel.
Number 3, temperature. 18 to 18.5 degrees Celsius, which is around 64 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, is the best temperature for optimal sleep.
You need to drop your core body temperature and your brain temperature by about 1 degree Celsius to fall asleep and stay asleep.
In simple terms, make your room cold and dark like my ex-wife's heart. Tip 4, alcohol. Avoid using alcohol as sleep aid, as it can block your REM sleep while also fragmenting the rest. However,
If you're with friends, have a glass of red wine. Just know, okay, my sleep's not going to be great.
what you've learned so far is the first gem we've stashed into the greatest vault of the world's most valuable resource, knowledge. There are so many more gems to stash away on health, wealth, and relationships. So tip number 5 is to consider subscribing to unlock the key to the vault. It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. And finally, tip number 6, digital screens and blue light. Research shows that exposure to screens with blue light, like an iPad, delays sleep, reduces melatonin, and decreases REM sleep.
So what was happening with this iPad reading is that you were artificially telling the brain it's still daytime.
However, that's not the worst part.
When they stopped the iPad reading, the sleep disrupted pattern continued for several days later. It was almost like a drug, that it had a washout period.
Using night mode or dark mode on devices can help reduce the impact of blue light, but blue light isn't the only problem. The apps on your phone are all part of the attention economy, which means that these companies like Instagram and Facebook make money from capturing your attention for as long as possible. Therefore, these apps are engineered specifically to use a bunch of tricks and tactics to ensure your eyes stay glued to the screen, causing you to keep scrolling for hours until it's 3 a.m. at night. Thankfully, there's an intriguing trick that you can use tonight.
If you really must take your phone into your bedroom, you can only use it standing up.
And finally, what about dreams? Dreams happen in REM sleep and surprisingly have 2 positive benefits. During dreams, your brain starts interweaving and connecting your recent memories with your entire knowledge base of experiences.
You start to fuse things together that shouldn't normally go together, but when they do, they cause marked advances in your thinking, in your productivity, in your ingenuity.
Secondly, dream sleep acts as overnight therapy, detoxifying harmful, traumatic emotions from your memories. Let's say you went through a traumatic event, like in 10th grade when you were just casually crossing the street on the way to school when the pedestrian light was on and you suddenly got hit by a car and went flying 10 meters off your bike into a patch of grass. Definitely hasn't happened to me. The next day, when you wake up, you'll feel better about those experiences because of the therapy your brain does in REM sleep. You'll still have a memory of the event, but all the harmful emotions from it are stripped away.
It's not time that heals all wounds. It is time during sleep, and particularly during dream sleep, that provides emotional convalescence.
That's the entire 2-hour podcast explained in 22 minutes. Subscribe, I gotta go to sleep now.